Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Full View, focusing on trans masks in media, where we shine a light on the lack of transmasculine representation in entertainment. We're your hosts, Avi
and Yas Skasiri.
And our guest today is Aiden Thomas. Aiden is the New York Times best-selling author of Cemetery Boys, a groundbreaking YA fantasy centered on a trans boy in a Latinx Brujex community. He is also the first openly trans author to hit the New York Times fiction bestseller list with a trans main character. Aiden's other hit titles include The Sunbearer Trials, Celestial Monsters, and Lost in the Neverwoods. He is truly one of the most visible transmasculine voices in contemporary young adult fiction. And that is an intro. Hey!
Hi!
Hi!
Hello!
Hi! Oh, thank you.
It feels so full circle for us to be doing another audio interview together like we did for the Cemetery Boys audiobook.
We did. That is let's date that. That was 2020, was it?
Yeah. Well, we probably did that
or 21.
interview. It was either at the very end of 2019 or the very beginning of 2020. Because
Okay.
it was supposed to come out in June 2020, right? So it had to have been in those really early months, I think.
That's right.
So it's like that magical pocket of right before the pandemic.
Yeah. Yep.
Where, it feel like 20 years ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly, but that was so special that Macmillan Audio included that at the end of Cemetery Boys. And for our listeners, yes, Aiden wrote Cemetery Boys, and I got to lend my voice to the narration of Cemetery Boys. But we'll get to that. I
recorded that.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember, Avi, but I was in my friend's closet when I recorded that because I had no sound dampening. I lived in a studio apartment that was half glass, and I was and I couldn't fit inside of my closets, so I had to bug my friend, and it wasn't it wasn't a much bigger closet, but we could make room for me tucked in there. Yeah, I have a picture of me just on the closet floor with their cat right next to me being what's happening?
That's incredible, but look at you now.
Look at us now. Yeah.
Look at us now. That's awesome. I love that. It's a good core memory. I think we want to know more about you, more about Aiden Thomas, your journey, just kind of how did you first get into writing? Was it always fantasy, or did that come later? Another question, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but when did you realize writing could be more than a passion? But you take your pick. Where do you want to kind of start?
Gosh, so to start with, I hated reading when I was a kid. Was very resistant, was not into it. I was bored all the time, which was a real bummer because both my mom and my Lita were so books were so important to them. And my Lita, she taught ESL and she worked at the library up until pretty much the end of her life. So I think they were both panicked by the fact that I was just I hate books, don't bring them anywhere near me. And for a long time, my mom would always take me to the library and I had to check out a book every 3 to 4 business days. And at night she would make me go into my room and read for 15 minutes. And I didn't want to do it. I thought it was so boring. And so I would check out books that I could stare at for 15 minutes. So that included the Wishbone classic retelling story that have the little terrier dressed up as Sherlock Holmes on the cover. So,
yes.
Right? I would get those because I was I can stare at a cute dog for 15 minutes and find something else to keep me busy. And then, God, the other one that really stands out was the Animorph series because, right? Because they have the little image, I don't even know what you would call those, flip animations. And so in the bottom corner where it's the kid into the animals, so I would just be sitting there flipping through those for 15-ish minutes.
Was there also holograph of covers?
Oh yeah, there were some very cool lenticular covers as well. You're right. And the Goosebumps books, I like those ones too. They had cool covers. Do you remember the old school textured ones It had like the little bumps in the like green gooey stuff. I loved that. I loved it.
That's I don't remember, but Yas does.
It's
Okay.
a very specific memory. But gosh, I'm trying to think. The first time I fully read a book and like enjoyed it was in sixth grade, and my Lita, she got me a copy of Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And that is the book that kind of changed my life. Because like what had been happening was that my Lita and my mom, they were kept trying to push like old classics on me, which I thought were boring and I could barely understand and had like nothing to do with me. I was like, why do I care about any of this? This is so just dull. Or like problem novels. So like books that were like sad and depressing. And so I was like, I don't want any of this. And then so when I picked up Howl's Moving Castle, it wasn't like this problem novel and it wasn't this like old classic that I just really felt so disconnected from. It was fantasy, which was a really important piece for me. And it was also really, really funny. And that humor, because even though we're dealing, that book definitely touches on some darker topics, it was just so much easier for me to consume and kind of interact with them because it was more approachable having this backdrop of fantasy and also humor tied into it. So that's really what got me into reading. And then I've been a fantasy addict ever since. I rarely stray away from the genre.
So was it Howl's Moving Castle that really got you into the fantasy genre as like just a fan, or were you also watching it on TV or movies?
This was long before it was turned into an anime.
Mm,
But so mostly the fantasy that I was interacting with was books. I don't remember a lot of, I mean, aside from like, fantastical like cartoons that I was binge watching and still do. I don't know that I really thought about fantasy as like a big media genre outside of books, probably until I saw Lord of the Rings in the movie theater
mm,
for the first time. And then
yeah.
that changed my whole life as well. Like that's become like a
Yeah.
lifelong obsession.
I was gonna say I was like scrolling through your Instagram because I was like,
I know.
I need to get promo material, and I saw your holiday like setup.
My
Explain.
Hobbit room for Christmas. I was so proud of it. It was so cozy in there. I was so upset when I had to take it down.
I know it looked great, so yeah.
Yeah, it was just so cozy. Yeah, so I have in our house we have a game room where we like watch movies and play video games, and it's all themed to Lord of the Rings. Like it's painted this really dark green color. We have beautiful Lord of the Rings art on all of the walls and like replicas and stuff like that. We have like a sign that says no admittance except on party business. So yeah, it's really bad. I have like for our anniversary, my partner got me this huge Balrog Lego set, and it's like one of my pride and joy. It's like in our living room, like displayed on a very prominent built-in shelf.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
so
That's the statement
yeah,
piece of the
the
room.
statement piece,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
So high fantasy has been deeply rooted into my blood for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up because I was trying to think too. I'm like, what fantasy stuff that? Because I'm also like I play D&D. I'm really into a
Yeah,
lot of that too. I grew up playing D&D because my brother was into it, my older brother, but he was into it like well before it was remotely
right.
mainstream. But I was like, outside of Disney movies, I was like,
Yeah,
there really wasn't children's oriented fantasy. Like I guess The Hobbit, they say it's like a little bit more of a kid's book. It's like you
yeah,
could read younger, I guess,
but what?
but I feel like yeah, I mean the genre has exploded. I think the last
Yeah.
like 5 or 10 years, especially when like Game of Thrones hit and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, for sure.
But okay, so Howl's Moving Castle got you into reading and fantasy. So then, what was the? Not, I always feel like punny when I say the word transition at trans people. But what was the transition into actually writing?
Fan fiction is how I started writing. And I'm trying to think. I discovered fan fiction in middle school, and that's when I started writing it. And from there, I quickly moved on to something even more nerdy and embarrassing, which is online role playing. Which, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, it's exactly like that, except everything is written in an online forum. So you're not really acting things out, you're writing it out. And I did like I literally like online role playing was my life. Julian is one of the first characters I ever created when I was a sophomore in high school, and now he's the star of one and a half of my books. So he was so easy to write because I already knew who this character was. And yeah, really the only reason I stopped doing that is because I got a book deal, and so I had to write actual books and not just role play anymore. But
But
yeah, that
what a
was
flex.
only because I didn't have time did I stop. And I actually was just chatting with some other friends recently, and they're like, "We're secretly doing an online role playing if you want to be a part of it." And I was like, "Yes, please send me that link."
Oh.
But yeah, like that was my community, and doing online role playing is also how I started kind of exploring my own gender, because for some reason I only ever played boys. And like I don't know why, just so strange. I don't know. I just liked it. So that was kind of how I started playing with gender, was in those online role playing like community spaces. And that's what taught me how to write. Like I have my MFA in creative writing, but it was very much fan fiction and role playing that like I cut my teeth on for like how to write more than school ever did.
I know. It's so funny. I'm laughing because I'm trying to piece together the journey. And you're like, well, I only stopped doing that because I got a book deal like out of nowhere, but I have my MFA in creative writing as well. I'm like,
Give us the timeline, Aiden.
I know. It's like I was doing my MFA while doing online role playing. It was really bad. Yeah.
Got it. But when did you decide you were like, I'm going to go get an MFA? Because what, you did like your BA in something else? Or, okay.
Yeah. So I, as an undergraduate and with, grandparents who were immigrants, when I was like, I like to write, they were like, are you sure?
Oh.
As an undergrad, I actually double majored because I love to overachieve in English with an emphasis in creative writing, and psychology with an emphasis in transracially adopted kids, which I really enjoyed, but it was also very stressful. So I did a lot of writing in undergrad, along with my online role playing.
Yeah.
And when I graduated, I was actually an EMT in Oakland for about a year. And that was a really hard job. And I was like, what if as many of us do when we're at our lowest mental points, I said to myself, what if I got an MFA? So I applied to an MFA, and like, it's so funny because like whenever people would be like, what are you getting your MFA for? It's not like you're going to publish a book and become a famous author. And I was like, no, I totally know and understand that. I want to teach creative writing. And I still do. One of my favorite things about being a published author is that I have all these opportunities to run workshops, especially like queer specific workshops. And I get to help up and coming writers and authors like fine tune their craft and find their voice, and that's one of my favorite things to do. So even as I was like actively like in my MFA getting short stories published in periodicals, I was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to teach. um, and then I got my MFA and I moved to Portland. Is that what I did? Yeah, moved to Portland. I was like, where am I?
Why
And
Portland? Why Portland?
my grandparents retired to Portland or outside of Portland, so mostly I wanted to move there because I had kind of spent my summers in the Portland area and I really liked it. But I also wanted to help out my grandparents, so I
Nice.
did a lot of that. And yeah, I like edited. So for my MFA, I wrote my first book ever, which was Lost in the Neverwoods, which ended up getting picked up. So the first draft was my thesis, and then I kind of edited it for a year, and I put it on Wattpad. Like it was a Wattpad story, y'all, and it was like doing pretty good. Like to toot my own horn. And
For people
Yes.
like me who don't know what Wattpad is,
how do I
uh,
explain Wattpad? It's like AO3, but for original works, if that makes
and
sense.
AO3 is
Oh God,
I
an
know,
archive
honestly.
of our own. So like
Okay.
it's like a fan fiction website where people
okay.
post
So
their
you could
stories.
publish like chapters of
Yes.
your book and kind of get it seen and out there. Okay, I watched Younger. That takes place in the publishing world, so I know small things.
Yeah, so just
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, great.
And I learned about my publisher. My publishing story is so weird and atypical, so it's not helpful for anybody, but I will go ahead and explain anyways. During NaNoWriMo, rest in peace, I was looking through their resources tab, And I came across what ended up being my publisher, Swoon Reads. And how Swoon Reads works is that it's an imprint of an imprint under Macmillan, or it was. It doesn't exist anymore. And how it worked was that you didn't need to have an agent because you could upload your manuscript onto their website, basically like Wattpad.
Mm.
People would read it, rate it, and review it. And that was sort of how editors found the stories that they would want to publish. And so that is how Holly West, my editor now, found me. And yeah, I lost my mind when I got that offer. I was in the middle of an all hands meeting at my tech job, sitting next to like my work wife, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I like showed her the email, and we're both like, like quietly losing our minds as we're like in this all hand with like 300 people, and it was really exciting. And we kind of got through the copy edits phase of Lost in the Neverwoods, and then my publisher called me and they asked if I would like to have Cemetery Boys actually be my first book as opposed to Lost in the Neverwoods. And I said yes. And that's how Cemetery Boys came to be my first book that I published. Second book I ever wrote, first book I published.
There you go. That's what I was like trying to remember. It was like Lost in the Neverwoods came first
Yeah.
and was intended to be your debut novel,
Yeah.
right?
And then I just kind of started harassing my editor about like my option book. So an option book being whenever you sell a book to a publisher, there's always this option clause that says basically to some whatever degree that that publisher gets first looks at whatever your next book is. So I
Mm.
started just harassing her about that. And and yeah, then it's the rest is history, I guess.
Now, did you already have the concept for like Cemetery Boys or like material? Like,
I didn't like
okay.
so when I sent her an email with my pitches, I had 5 different book ideas. I was like, here we go. And like the first book, I was like, listen, I've got 60,000 words written of this bad boy. I have a full outline and synopsis. This is like good to go. And then as like you went down the list, the ideas got like more and more vague until you hit Cemetery Boys, which was number 5. And it was 1 paragraph long, and most of the sentences ended in question marks. I was like, look, listen, this witchy book for this boy who can see ghosts, but like maybe he's Latina and we do this around Dia de Muertos. I don't know. Maybe he's also queer. Wouldn't that be wild? And if we really feel like just going absolutely nuts about it, maybe he's trans. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Like truly thinking that like that was not going to be the one that she picked. And I remember specifically I sent that email Friday night. I think it was like 5 p.m. West Coast time, so it was like 8 p.m. my editor's time. So I was like, perfect. This is a problem for Monday, Aiden. I can go through the weekend with peace in my heart. And then I think like 2 or 3 hours later, she emailed me back, and I think all she said was, I want Cemetery Boys. And I was just like absolutely shocked and floored and just kind of like lost my mind and was just so beyond excited that I was actually going to be able to write a book that, had a character who was like me in it.
Yeah, I love that. So I think too, for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the books, because we've talked about 2 specifically, do you have like a quick elevator pitch for both of them?
So Lost in the Neverwoods, that first book that I wrote and sold, that one is a dark and twisted reimagining of what happens to Wendy after she comes home from Neverland. And it takes place in it's a contemporary book. It takes place in a small coastal town in Oregon that's called Astoria. And the basic plot is that when she was younger, Wendy and her 2 brothers went missing in the woods behind their house. Wendy was found 6 months later, but her brothers were never found. We jump to her 18th birthday, and she almost and kids in her town are starting to go missing again. And everyone's looking at Wendy, wondering if she or her brothers have anything to do with it. And then as she's driving home, she almost runs over a boy who says that that he is Peter Pan, a boy from stories that she used to tell her brothers, and that she knows where her brothers are and where the missing kids are and how to get them back if she can help him find his shadow. So that's the pitch for that one. And then Cemetery Boys, I like to call my ghost story turned rom-com. It's about a trans boy named Yadriel who is part of a community of brujos. So Traditionally, the women can heal the bodies and the souls of the living, and the men can summon the dead and release them to the afterlife. But his community is very traditional, so Yaz has not been given the usual rights to be blessed by Lady Death, who is their goddess. And so he decides to break into a church and do the ceremony himself, along with his best friend slash cousin, Maritza. And his plan is to summon the ghost of his cousin who just mysteriously died. But he instead summons the spirit of Julian Diaz, the local bad boy at his high school. And the two of them have to work together to solve the mystery of Yadriel's cousin's death and what happened to Julian.
Great job. What are you
Nice.
talking about?
Perfect. Perfect. I just wanted to catch people up just in case, because it is interesting and it's really awesome to hear. So it sounds that the Lost in the Neverwoods doesn't, like, at least that's not a main part, is a queer identity within it.
No, there's like queerness isn't discussed, and it's, you know, basically white characters. There's a Mexican best friend, but and so it's not something that was really directly related to like my personal identity.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much, I entered publishing because I was writing a book that was white and straight.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, what got me in the door.
That's interesting. For the imprint that you said was called Swoon?
Swoon Reads, yeah.
Swoon Reads. So it sounds like it was kind of almost like, I don't know, trying to say democratized or decentralized, but basically the fans, people are voting on it, and it kind of gives like editors an idea of like, oh, this would do well.
Yeah.
And then so she read that, and then she was like, do you have any other ideas?
Yes.
And then the one that was closest to your identity, she was like, wait, that needs to be the first one we go with.
That's exactly how it went, yeah. And I was so excited.
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool to hear, because I think it is funny, I think, like how natural themes happened across the season. Avi and I have talked about this, where when we have a lot of firsts, people who are breaking the barriers, but a lot of people, the way they broke in was being authentic to who they are, and like not leaving the different like intersectional labels at the door that we feel so pressured to like leave behind.
Here's the other question. Did you feel the industry was more receptive to certain types of queer stories over others?
Yeah, I mean, especially back then and still now, that's true. I am very proud. I take a lot of pride in the fact that the first, you know, novel about a trans person by a trans person was a Mexican story. It was an intersectional one. The truth is that, first of all, we don't have queer representation versus, you know, straight or heteronormative representation is a huge disparity. And within that huge disparity, we look at that queer representation, and there's even a bigger disparity between stories that are white versus by authors of color, or who have like different intersectionalities. And that's just how it is, because anytime you're dealing with a corporation, it is going to be run off a system that is inherently classist, which means it's inherently racist as well. So you're going to get less diversity just kind of by default, by being blocked out of the system, especially by the higher ups. I will say there's a lot of people working at publishers who want to put forth these stories, these marginalized stories. But the problem is that those C-level executive suites are the ones who make the final call. So it's really frustrating when you have a team that is really working so hard to do the right thing, but they're being stopped by the people that pull rank over them, basically. So that's very much the industry standard still, and will probably remain that way for forever. There's always going to be a disparity. But I feel very proud in what I've been able to accomplish and the platform and community that I've been able to build. And part of that is being able to uplift other authors and their voices and their stories who are marginalized, who are people of color, who are also trans and things like that. So that's a big role, I think, in my world in publishing, is to help get those other stories seen and supported. It's funny because I think a lot of people, when I do interviews, are like, you've paved the way, or like you've done this, that, and the other. And it feels much less like paving a way and much more like I have shoved my arm into the door and I'm trying to sneak in as many people as I can with me.
I love that.
Do you feel like the numbers in terms of like book sales and revenues back the C-suite stance of like, we need to mostly publish like these white cishet stories, is I feel like in film and TV at least, people will say that, but then something like Heated Rivalry like does super well, and it's just I have a whole thing, and like I probably went on multiple rants that a lot of it I think has to do with marketing. People don't know how to market; they purposely don't market things well. But I know the book industry is a bit like, like it got upended with Kindle and different things like that. So I'm just curious if you knew if the data actually supports, because here you are with a super intersectional story being a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, so I'm a weird fluke, that's for sure. But what we need to, when we're looking at the larger system at play, it's serving its own purpose that it wants. The publisher tells us that marginalized stories, especially queer stories, don't make money, so that they don't buy them. When they do buy them, they don't put any marketing behind them, so those books don't get seen and they don't find their audience. It's not that the books are bad, it's that they just haven't found their audience. And if people don't know that these books exist, how can they read them? And so because of that, and then they're like, well, okay, well, those books don't sell, so we're going to give you a smaller marketing budget, which means no one sees you, which therefore we have decided says that queer stories don't sell. So it's literally like a snake eating its own tail, and it's a cycle that is self-serving, which is really, really frustrating. Because so much of it is just like getting people to know that the book even exists to begin with. Like, again, my publisher, Swoon Reads, was an imprint of an imprint. We had no budget. Like, the budget was non-existent. And how I found my readership was literally by being online for like 6 to 9 months before the book came out. And I was introducing people to my characters. I was telling them about the characters, about funny scenes that I wrote, and like world building. I just kept talking about my story and my characters with people, which meant, and doing character art, which I think is a huge like asset for authors and gaining an audience, is by tapping into artists, because having that visual representation and all of the like background information that I gave meant that readers were already emotionally attached to my characters before they even picked up the book. Cemetery Boys, it was in its second printing, and it had already earned out its royalties before the book even came out, just through pre-orders. And yeah, no one anticipated that, especially my publisher. Like, when we were like, I don't know, probably like 9 months out, I was like, oh my God, I want to do a pre-order campaign. I'm so excited. This is going to be the coolest thing ever. And I emailed my imprint, and I was like, hey, I want to do a pre-order campaign. I don't know how much I should buy though. Like, usually with pre-orders, like, how much do people sell? And they were like, oh yeah, usually I think at most we get about 50 pre-orders. And I was like, okay, cool. So like, I commissioned my cover artist Mars Lauterbach to do character art in the style of like tarot cards for Cemetery Boys. And I went online to find a printer. First of all, could not order from anywhere for only 50. Like, the smallest batch I could get was 100. So I was just like, I guess I'll just have a lot to give out later. So I like ordered that first batch of 100, and then I kind of just kept talking about my book and kept sharing the link for pre-orders and like how to submit to the pre-order campaign. And at one point I realized I wouldn't be able to afford the postage, and that I would need to like borrow money from friends and family. So I like emailed my publisher again, and I was like, hey guys, it's me. I was like, this pre-order campaign, like, I actually like, I don't think I can afford to like send everybody all these things. And they were like, I was like, could you guys help? And they were like, how many pre-orders do you have? And I emailed them back, and I think at that point I had 1,400.
Wow.
And they were like, yeah, we'll take this over. And so all of a sudden, both
Wow.
me and my publisher were like, holy shit, people are actually buying this book, and like a lot of people are going to read this thing. And
Yeah.
so they like took over the pre-order campaign. I still run all of my international campaigns myself. And I think by the time Cemetery Boys came out, I think we were at over 2,400 pre-orders. So that was, yeah, like no one anticipated that at all. And it was a huge shock to us.
Yeah.
And a huge success.
And a huge success, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but wow, the amount of like work you had to do yourself just
Yes.
to get it out there, which is also, that is really awesome that social media, it does make that accessible now, where
Yes.
like authors can do it, but that's still so much time and energy, and then putting your money up front for the tarot cards and then potentially the postage.
Yes. I also whenever I do a pre-order campaign of any kind, my publisher does not pay the artist. So far, all of my stuff has been with Mars Lauterbach, and I also did some work with Gibby Arts. But what I do is I pay the artist so that the artist retains full rights of whatever art they make me, so they can do whatever they want with it. But I also have permission to do my pre-order campaigns, and then I also work with artists who sell in my online shop on my website, where 60% of the profits go to the artist. So I'm very much always trying to invest back into the artist and also make sure that they don't get stuck in really terrible contracts with my publisher.
Good call. Yeah.
Yeah. It's rough out here.
I really love again what you said a little earlier around the way that in your success of yes, carving this path, but you're also creating space to invite others in to use your own success or your platform. I really I love that. I believe in that too so much.
Yes.
About how to give back to our community and help our fellow artists, and especially queer, trans, Black, brown, people of color just really also elevate and have an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I know that's a lot of responsibility too sometimes. I don't know. It's I feel pressure sometimes, but yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good kind of responsibility. I think the most trouble it causes me is that I'm always saying yes to too many blurbs, and so I'm always having to read too many books in a month, and I'm just I need to do less next time, and then it's hard because I'm just well, no, because this is a really good story,
That's
so it's hard for me to say no to blurbs. Sometimes my agent will be I'm literally saying no to blurbs until this date for you, and I'm just okay.
I love that I'm learning so much, because now this is me going to be Aiden, what is a blurb?
Oh my god, yeah. So blurbing and an ARC. What's an ARC mean? An ARC is an advanced reader copy of a book. And usually that is before final pass pages, where you're really doing all of pass pages is the last time an author gets to look and make any changes. Before that stage is usually when an ARC is created. That advanced reader copy that is sent to literary journals and reviewers for early reviews, because you do this in order to generate some early buzz before the book comes out, because pre-orders are so important. Pre-orders are how you get on anticipated lists, and it's how your publisher decides whether or not they're going to put more money behind marketing your book and stuff like that. So that's what an ARC is. And then a blurb is when you send an ARC to an author. Well, first you ask ahead of time. Very important to ask permission first. If the author is available to blurb your book, you send them that ARC, that advanced reader copy. They read it, and if they like it, they will provide a little blurb, which is basically their endorsement. And it can be anywhere from one sentence to about 3 or 4 sentences that usually end up on either the cover, the inside flap, or the back. And it's basically being it's usually a more popular author, someone who's well known, so that when people pick up the book and see oh, Aiden Thomas liked this book, yeah, I'll give it a try because I loved Aiden's books.
Makes
so that's
sense.
what blurbing and ARCs are.
Almost like a credibility.
That's really
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
It is really cool to because I've taken a stab at a novel. It's very different than writing a script, because I was what do you mean I have to describe what this thing looks like? But I was listening to some writer podcasts in the novel world, and I think what was really interesting is writing. Sometimes I think people it feels really isolating sometimes, where you're I'm just writing by myself. But then it's realizing it's actually super communal if you want it to be. How you're talking about whether you're role-playing or you're supporting each other, or workshops, or if there's people that you're doing writing groups with. So I do think that's a really cool way of that authors are supporting each other so much.
Yeah, and I think that blurbs are do they move the needle? Probably not. Yeah, but a really important part of the blurbing process is having that connection to established authors.
Right.
So when you ask for a blurb, often your agent or editor would be it'd be really good if you as the author wrote a special note to this author that we're going to ask for a blurb. And sometimes we're connected directly, and a lot of my best and dearest friends in the publishing space are people that I blurbed for, like who requested me to read their book. I fell in love with it and I just started bothering them all the time.
Mm.
And now we're all friends. We like get together and do writing retreats and stuff like that. So I think in terms of like helping a new author feel like an author, blurbs are a really important part. And I think the other important part is authors getting, like debut authors, getting to go to big book conventions like Y'all Fest and Y'all West and those sorts of things. Because like up until this point, like their whole career has basically existed within their computer.
Yeah.
And so they get to like be in person and not only meet readers, but also meet established authors and be like, okay, I am a real author. Like, look at me, and making those connections, which are really important,
I bet.
and not feeling alone and having that community. Yeah.
That networking, really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, totally. Yep.
Yeah. I think to pivot to this a beautiful journey, but I am curious, kind of going back to the fantasy genre, and this is something. Well, and now we have our writer here, where we've talked about this idea of sometimes when people, maybe someone wants to write something, whether it's a script or a book, and they want to create, like, they want trans representation at the forefront. Sometimes it can be a little flat, where like the characters, that they don't really have anything else going on besides the fact they're trans. They forget there's a personality, or it becomes like hitting someone over the head with identity. And that's, I think, I've fallen into that trap too, being like Persian and trans. I'm like, how do I want to make my identities forward, but would you recommend to like writers when they're approaching their work of writing, like being like that balance of being identity forward, but also at the end of the day telling a good story and an authentic, truthful story?
So I have two different answers depending on if that writer is trans or not.
Let's start with the person is not trans.
Okay, if they're not trans, I would ask them why they think that they are the person who should be telling this story, especially if it's a trans main character. But even if it's a trans side character, often what I find is that people are looking for permission to be able to write these stories or write these characters. And often what I find is that those people have no trans people in their life in order to even, be starting to dissect the complications and the nuances of being a trans person, especially with other marginalized intersectionalities. So often when I'm talking to someone who says they want to have trans rep in their books, but everyone's saying to not do that, and asking for that permission, what I say that is, if you want to queer your stories, you have to queer your life. If you do not have trans people in your life, don't write a book about us. You should make friends, open up your community, open up your friendship circle, and make friends with people who are queer and trans. And that is especially true for trans people of color, or just people of color in general. Like, if you don't have Black or brown friends in your life, you should not be writing about them, because you don't know or understand or love them. And that's a really important part to understanding a character, is all those pieces. For trans writers, it's funny because it's like, I think people get really caught up on just being like, well, what if I'm only writing about the transness, and like, I don't want it to be a sad story. I think what people forget, that for us as humans, which is the same truth as any trans characters, is that being trans is not the most interesting part about us. There's other things in our lives. There's other parts of our identity that make up ourself. And it's those nuances and those other pieces that really flesh out a story and really give it emotional depth and also character depth, is to, because we're not, like, I don't go throughout my day being like, I'm trans and here's all my trans problems I'm going to deal with today. Like, I'm thinking about how this weekend I need to save up to pay for a really expensive Magic the Gathering pre-release that I want to do. I'm thinking about, oh my God, I need to schedule my doctor's appointment with a pap smear, and how miserable is that going to be? So for me, it's like, when I'm thinking about writing stories and like writing my trans characters, a very important part of it is kind of the foibles and the like embarrassing, like bad things that happen, because I think they give like richness and nuance to like the rest of my like life and my lived experience, which is outside of just being a trans person. So if that's what you're worried about, write about other things that are impacting that person other than just like their transness, I would say. Yeah, there's more depth to it.
I love that. Yeah. And some days you do have days where you're like, wow, I'm really trans.
Yeah,
Especially
sometimes
when you have
it
to deal
does
with
happen.
healthcare or something or insurance. You're like, oh.
Yeah. And it's rude because most of the time I forget. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just moving through the world. Like,
Sometimes.
something rude happens, and I'm like, oh yeah.
Sometimes.
You're like, wait a
Yes.
second.
Literally, the other day I was on the phone with like customer service and they were just like, okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. All right, we will just, ma'am, 1 second. 1 second, ma'am. I said, you don't have to call me ma'am. You can call me Avi. I'm not a
That
woman.
happens to me all the time too, because it's like, you forget.
It's because our voices pitch higher.
Yeah. When you've been raised and socialized like as a girl, like your speech pattern is totally different.
Exactly.
And even just
Yeah.
the sound of our voices is a little bit different because of the way that we talk. Like I have my cis voice that I put on usually when I'm doing customer service
Yes.
and like when I'm out in public, but my real voice is not like that. Like it
Mhm.
pitches and squeaks all the time.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes they'll also like if they see like a whole thing about name changing last episode, but I kept my full. I go by Yas, but Yasmin is my legal name because white people don't know it's gendered. But basically, but sometimes I think they'll see it, or like it took me a while to get Mister added to like something as simple as my credit card, and then they'll be like ma'am, and then I'll be like I will purposely be like, I'm sorry, but I'm a man. Could you not call? Like, I'll purposely just pitch it down to be like, why are you calling me that? I'm not the,
Yeah.
to like,
I'm actually deeply offended right now.
yeah, I'm like,
my testosterone is pissed off at you.
That's
I'm
hilarious.
like, what? Because I don't even mention being trans. I'll just be like, what are you doing?
Right, you're just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy. So, dealing with,
Oh
sometimes
my
where things get
God.
inherently hard or dark. Something that I liked, because I read Cemetery Boys, I think when I was first transitioning, I was just trying to find trans mask representation, which was not easy. Like, I really couldn't find a lot. But something, and there's certain things that you can, like using the medium to support a choice. Like, for example, that we never hear Yadriel's dead name. It's just either said or cut out, or they said the dead name. And, and obviously there's the transness of it that he identifies as a brujo, and they're like, no. So, but were there moments where, like, was that a conscious choice? Was it a creative choice of like, how did you approach certain moments? Or like, and did you go into it thinking, oh, my main audience will be trans people, so I want to comfort them? Or for the cis people, do you add stuff to be like, by the way, this is like a little learning moment?
I think it's funny what I don't think about like as a trans person, kind of just like the day-to-day part of it also happens within like book context. So often I'll get like a note from my editor being like, can you explain this? I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot, because it's like so inherent to me. So then when it came time for writing Cemetery Boys, like obviously it was like inherently going to be for a trans mask, specifically Latine, like audience for that eye, because they're going to understand the nuances and also like the inside jokes and stuff like that. But I was also very much like, if this is a book for teens, I'm also going to make it a little bit of a learning guide for the adults in their lives. So for that scene that you're talking about with Yadriel being dead named, that happens when he is talking to his Lita. And that was probably one of the first scenes that I came up with and decided was really important to have early on, because I wanted to show how, when our loved ones do these microaggressions of misgendering us or dead naming us, and they kind of pass it off like, oh, I'm doing my best, or, whatever, it puts a lot of stress on trans people. It makes us worried that if we keep correcting people, especially the people that we love, or our family members, that eventually they're just gonna be like, they're gonna get irritated with us and be like, you know what, I give up, I tried, I'm not bothering anymore. So for me, with that scene, Yadriel's dead name didn't matter. I don't even know what it is. The important part was seeing his internal reaction to having his Lita say that to him. And that scene is important for people who are not trans to read, and to see that when they do those microaggressions, how it deeply wounds someone that they love and care about on the inside, even though they're not saying something. So there is moments like that. And I would say that that's probably one of the biggest ones. Yeah.
You were so thoughtful. I feel like, I mean, you're bringing so much of yourself to the writing, but I love what you said about like you were going into it, like fully bringing all of the intersectionalities of you to this story and knowing who it's going to resonate with, but also thinking beyond of like the impact, maybe. I don't think it sounds like you didn't anticipate maybe the impact. Would you say
No,
so?
I
Okay.
thought 50 people were going to read my book, Avi.
50
I was
people.
having a heart attack, okay? I was like, wait, this is too
um,
many.
I love that. I love that. So yeah, but like that kind of, I get that. That kind of touches on like how you were intentional and like including moments of joy, but also moments of teaching. But like as we veer into also again the other part of not just the transness, but like the cultural landscape of being Latine, like I'm curious on how did you navigate honoring tradition while challenging parts of it as well, like just kind of within that whole spirituality like component of it, but also just like again the like very traditional, like you said, ways that you know Latine families can be.
Yeah. And it's hard just because, we want to be respectful of our traditions and everything like that. And it's never about breaking tradition. It's about opening up space so that you're really honoring everyone in your community in an authentic way. So for me, when I was doing it in the book, like I very much wanted to point out the nuance, especially within Latine communities, which can be very steeped in machismo and also Catholicism. And how does that interact with, suddenly having a member of your community be trans? And then you're like, I don't really even know what that means. Because on top of it, we also have Spanish as a language barrier that is a gendered language, which just creates so many accidental landmines for people to step on. So I really wanted to show the nuance of like, Yaz's family does not hate him or like completely reject him for who he is. They just don't understand. And then a lot of that heavy lifting of explaining goes onto the shoulders of that trans community member. I will say at the end of the book, Yadril's dad, who is kind of the leader of this Brew Hex community, makes a speech about being more open and welcoming and honoring people in our community. And I think that was probably one of the most stressful scenes for me to write because first of all it's the end of the
Oh
book
my
and if you
gosh.
mess up the end of the book you're just screwed like so every time I read the ending I'm
Oh
like
my god.
screaming through it
Yeah.
um but I knew that I was going to have a lot of people picking apart this story, and so I wanted to be authentic, and I was like, okay, so if I want this speech to really feel real, what do I want that to look like? How's it going to look like? And what I ended up doing is I went and watched old videos from from quinces that I've been to, listening to the dads give their dad speech. And what I did was I took that language and I just kind of queered
I
it. like
love
it's
that.
it's thank you. Like it's very much the same topics, the same cadence, but it's instead of, my little girl's becoming a woman and how weird we don't have time to unpack all of that. Like I turned it into, my son is stepping into his identity
Mm,
in this different sort of way,
yeah.
and how do we welcome him with open arms and embrace him
Mm.
as he is. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned, this is a type of story where people gonna pick apart. Have you experienced like, besides like the typical trans hate mail? I hate to say that. I
Right.
hate to put it like that, but I know that's unfortunately a given. I'm sure you got a whole lot of hate for just the trans
Right.
story, but was there also like the cultural pushback of either this wasn't represented correctly or that's because I sometimes I wonder if people it's like that's not how my family did it or you missed this. Was that also part of the
Oh, 100%. Especially back in like probably 2018 to 2020, there was this real emphasis on own voices and people policing what that would look like. And so there was a lot of people when you would have like a West African fantasy come out, you would have people critiquing and being like, well, in my family, or, that's not how we understand it. And in like the Latina community, for me, it was the magical practices, which are very much like what's written in the book is very much what I personally practice within my own home and my own life. But it's funny because it's like I spent a really long time trying to emulate the community that I grew up in, which was Hispanic and Black. And so when I'm writing my stories and the Brewhex community composes of Hispanic folks and also Black folks. And so I was always getting weird pushback, weird racial pushback. And people being like, well, blah, yada, yada, this, that, and the other. And I was like, no, no, no. I get to decide what this community looks like. And my community is very diverse. And so that's why I have the representation that I do in my stories, because it's a reflection of my lived life and, a reflection of the people that I love and that I honor every day. And even within that, even like within the Latina representation, because Latina culture is not a monolith. Like it's all different. Like you could talk to 100 trans Mexican boys and they will all have wildly different experiences with their own culture and moving through it and transitioning within their culture. And so it gets so frustrating because like even then I was still trying to be like, and here's different Latina communities within this bigger community. People are just so driven to police it for some reason and be like, well, that's not, how I grew up or this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, no, of course it's not.
No.
Because we all have different
You can't please everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
totally.
Yeah, we all have different experiences, and you're not going to be able to please everybody.
Yeah.
I can't write about everyone's individual lived experience, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's like, for me, it's like two things. It's like important for the people who are listening, like when you're writing, not to get in your head about that, because like I talk about this on the Malaysian panel I'm on. I kind of, because I had more white passing before I transitioned especially, and I had blonde hair at some point, I was like, I can't write to being Persian or write Persian stories, but I grew up mostly with my Persian family. I'm culturally very Persian. And finally, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to write to what I know. And then also it does speak to the lack of representation, right? Because I think there's an element of like people read something and there's a desperate desire to be fully recognized. And I think there's some of that too. And it's, there's never going to be enough, I think. But I think that's also why it's so important to be talking about. And that's why, we're doing the podcast and the panels and stuff, because there's so many different stories. And even if we were given all the funds in the world, we still can't tell them all, but there's so few that are told. Then it starts to become do we represent everyone with one story? Or so I think that's twofold for me.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is that we need more of those writers writing those stories is what we need.
Absolutely.
We need more diverse books to be able to pick from.
Mm-hmm. And with diverse books also comes with finding the right narrator for the audiobook.
It's true.
I feel like now this is like switching where I'm like the interviewer of the two, working together.
Oh, God.
But yeah, because I would love to know about how you two connected. How did this happen? Because it feels very, I don't know, Aiden, if you were like, is there going to be like someone who could actually voice this authentically? Or, so what was that process like of you two coming together to bring us the magic of the audiobook of Cemetery Boys?
Avi, I think you should go first, because then I can provide all of the context around it.
Okay. The context, around it. Okay. Wonderful. I was living in Chicago. I think like preparing about to like be done in Chicago and like move to LA, but I was doing a play at some point in like Washington DC. I don't know, it was like very compounded in this like last half of the year of like I get an email from a producer at Macmillan Audio being like, have you ever done an audiobook? There's this title, maybe you'd be interested. Would you like to audition? I said, I've never narrated an audiobook before. What is an audiobook? No, I'm just kidding. So I was like, immediately though.
To be clear, I had no idea that you had never auditioned for an audiobook before. I had no idea that they sought you out. Oh
Correct.
My gosh.
Here's how they found me. They literally, I guess the producer really was going, or whoever the team was really going deep into finding people who could authentically represent this character, this story, this lived experience. So I think there used to be a website. I don't know if it's still active. It might be, but it's called the T List. And it was like a database online for where trans actors could freely just put their headshot and resume and little bio on this website.
That's so cool. I had no
So the
idea.
producer found me on that website. And
Oh, that's so
yeah,
cool.
exactly. So I was discovered. But yeah, so I basically like immediately fell in love, and I was like, had that visceral moment of reading what the description was, and I was like, that's me. I said, yeah, I'm gonna audition. I don't care. I recorded on my phone. The sent it away. I think I was already in Washington, D.C. working on the play when I got the email of saying that the author, you, and like the producers have approved me to be the narrator of the book. And then that's where we just kind of like moved forward with scheduling and like figuring out like I was going to be in LA. So that's when like they booked a studio for me again, my first time
It's
recording. The
awesome.
producer was with
So
me
cool.
actually the whole process of me recording, just to help guide me. And like it was really like learn by doing, but it felt so comfortable, it felt so natural, and it felt like just a true gift to get to like do that and have that be my first
Yeah.
audiobook.
Yeah, which is how I feel about it as well, right? I'm like
Yeah.
so excited. That's so wild because I would have never guessed
They
that.
like
Like they did
scoured
not
the
tell
ends
me
of the
that they
earth
just
so
like
they could.
were looking for folks. That is so funny. Literally, it's so on my end, typically authors don't get a say in their audiobook narrators. I think it's getting a little more lenient, especially if you're like a marginalized author, but for the most part, you don't get say. But they emailed me and I was so freaking excited. I was at my old tech job sitting at the front desk when I got the email, and they're like, hey, Aiden, I think I had 4 auditions to
Oh,
listen
wow.
to. And I think yours was the third one I listened to. And everyone did a really good job. And I was like, first two, I was like, damn, this is going to be really hard to decide. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I got to Avi's, and I've told Avi this story before, but I was listening to your tone of voice. And I was like, oh, because when Avi narrates Cemetery Boys, and I would say in general as an audiobook narrator, Avi has this gentle, soft, almost like a lullaby quality to their voice. And I remember hearing you speaking first, and I was like, oh, yes, I'm feeling very settled. But then it was the way that you said Yadriel's name that my like heart like broke open. And like, it was probably like the second paragraph. And I was just like, immediately, I was like, this is my narrator.
No.
They have to be my narrator. Like, this is Yaz.
Yeah.
And your voice is Yaz. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain it other than it's the gentle soft spokenness that you
Mm.
used in that audition, and then throughout the rest of the book,
Yeah.
it was just so perfectly Yaz
Mm.
that like when I was done, I was like, I have to have Avi, please God, let us have Avi.
I was
I was
I
so
love
available.
that.
I
My
was
excited.
Pisces
available.
self over
So.
here is tearing up over it. I.
Oh,
No,
yes.
literally, like when I try to listen to the audiobook, I get like all choked up now. And I don't
Yeah.
get that way about my other books, but
Yeah.
Cemetery Boys, I'm just like, oh,
I
it was
Yeah.
such
know.
a huge moment for me,
Yeah, but your writing was like, oh, it guided me every step of the way. Like I mean, like why it felt like it's so much heart is because like the way you write has so much heart, and so like I was able to like really lean in emotionally, and like yeah, like if you heard any break or any emotion, that was like real, right? Because like
Yeah, it
I was
was
moved by your
so good.
words.
It was, yeah, that was one of my coolest days
Yeah,
in as like an author. I think
yeah,
that's still top five,
it's
was being able to
beautiful.
hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I mean, it's so powerful to have like and somebody who can actually authentically, whether it's wrote the words for you or you got to
Yeah.
hear your
Mm.
words back. I mean, that's the type
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
not to be
And
punny because it's a magical book, but that's a type of magic that we don't get to experience a lot in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
truly, and like it was my publisher that was like, we're doing like this is how we're doing it. I didn't have to be like, hey, please God, get to like trans Latina
Wow.
people to read for this book. They really like understood that it was a really important thing to do the right way. They did the same thing with my cover artists. I got to pick my cover artist, which no one ever gets to do. Um, and I mean, I kind of coerce them into it because like I had Mars do the character art, and every time they finished one, I would send it to my publisher. I'd be like, "Oh my god, isn't this cute? Isn't this so pretty? Isn't Mars so good at this?" And then one day they sent me a PDF
Hmm.
that had, I think, 8 artists in it and examples of their
Hmm.
work. And they were all either Latine and or trans
Interesting.
of some sort,
Okay.
which
Wonderful.
was really cool and exciting.
Yeah.
And there was like really just beautiful, brilliant artists all throughout that document. And I remember like scrolling through it and being like, holy shit, this is gonna be really hard to like pick, like who's gonna do the cover. And then I remember I got to the very last person because apparently this is just how it goes. And I was looking at the art and I was like, oh, wait, I recognize that art. That's Oikawa from Haikyuu. Because I had commissioned Mars to do Oikawa like fan art before. And I was
Mm.
like, oh my god, it's Mars. So of course I emailed them
Oh.
back and I was like, please, please, please can I have Mars? And now this, if anyone from my publisher is listening, you have to turn it off for a second because like I said, publishers work as the middleman. They do not let the artist and
Hmm.
the author talk.
Hmm.
But
Mm.
because Mars and I
Hmm.
already had an established rapport, what we did for Cemetery Boys and continue to do now
Yeah.
for all of my covers is that we talk to the publisher, but then we go and we text each other and we're like, what colors do you like? And I'm like, I don't know, what poses do you like the best? And so we're
Oh.
secretly able to kind of narrow it down to what we both want and like have
Mm.
I
the
don't
publisher
understand
agree
why
on
that's
it.
not the norm. I feel like that makes
Yeah.
so much
Well,
sense to like collab.
I I think about it like, you know, when, especially in California, when you go to a public pool and it
Hmm.
says, hey, if you have active diarrhea, please don't come in.
Right.
I think it's something like that. I
Okay.
think that there were some instances where some authors really
Oh,
lost it
okay.
and like got
Mm.
Got
really
it.
intense about it.
So to
And
protect the
that's
Yeah.
artist,
exactly
yeah,
to
that
protect the
makes
artist.
sense.
And like, you know, for me, it's like, I I don't think I'm a professional in anything. Like I have my publisher because they know what they're talking about, and so I do like take what they say into consideration.
Mm.
But Mars and I do tweak it to be what we want it to look
I love
like, and
that.
it's fun.
That's
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
and I will like, and Mars does such beautiful character art that I'll often go back into my manuscript and I will change
Wow.
descriptions of a character to fit what they have drawn because it's like so beautiful and brilliant. I'm just like, Mars, your brain. I love
That's
it.
great. I love that. You're both
Yeah.
It's
influencing
really
each other.
cool.
It's truly collaborative, but like you
Yeah,
said,
Yeah.
that's not typical of
not typical at
how
all.
it
Yeah,
works. Okay.
we're cheating.
I get that. I get that.
Haha.
Yes.
One of the reasons we've been like, wait, what are you talking about? Is we are not in the publishing world, and most of our guests actually haven't been. We really have been trying to be diverse in multiple ways, and one is discipline. So I think it's really incredible just to learn and hear about the book industry. And that being said, I do think a lot of our podcast has focused on transmasculine representation in film and television. And I'm curious, what do you feel like the difference is between representation in books versus film and TV?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say that literature has always been a bit more forward thinking than film and TV, just historically. But yeah, it's kind of what we mentioned earlier, where it's like everyone says it doesn't sell for some reason, but then you have something like Heated Rivalry that comes and just like knocks it out of the park, right? So in terms of like the difference, like publishing is very much more on the up and up in terms of trans representation. And I would say that's even more true for indie publishing or small press publishing. Like they've been queerer for longer than traditional publishing has. And again, that all comes back to corporations. So it's nice to see that we're getting more representation in books, but you know, like I said earlier, it's still such a small, minuscule amount that, you know, that compared to film and TV adaptations is even smaller. So it's all these boundaries that we have to break through. And I think it's also reflective of where the money is, right? Like film and TV makes a lot more money than books do. So books are kind of a little bit more leeway and freedom to push barriers. Whereas, especially in, you know, a post 2020 climate and film and TV shows and animation, you know, they have to be really sure that they're going to get this return on this investment. And books, it's a little bit cheaper to put out a book than it is to put out, you know, 12 episodes of a season TV show. So I think that there's that that barrier is just kind of inherently baked into it.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. Would you want your books to be adapted?
Dude, I think Cemetery Boys has been optioned 3 times,
Really?
which means nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes like an author options a book and they announce it and then nothing happens. And
Yeah.
that's 99.99% of the time.
Yeah.
I can't go into specifics. One, I was going to torch the thing if it didn't get canceled because I was like, this is going in exactly the wrong way, which was terrifying, and
Yeah.
actually made it so that I was like, I don't really care if we don't have conversations about
You
adaptation
ghosted them.
because now I'm frightened.
Yeah.
So we've had like really
Okay.
cool people on our side, but it's funny because for me, I want my things adapted into animation. I don't want live action. I would much rather than be adapted, especially fantasy settings, because you either need a really big budget to do that live action, or it's going to look super janky.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also, like, my books are for teenagers, and animation is still something that is very much geared towards, that children's age category, very broadly. And I think, especially with the magic and like with my high fantasy series, the Sunbearer Trials, like that one would be a whole new world with all these beautiful cities that they would not be able to do justice to in live action, but would look stunning in animation, like Avatar: The Last Airbender or something like that. Would be really, really cool.
Now, is this a trilogy, or it meant like, or no? Is this, what is it? Sorry, the Sunbearer Trials.
Oh yeah, the Sunbearer Trials is a duology,
and it's celestial monsters. And go ahead, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so it's a duology. It's the Sunbearer duology, and the first book is the Sunbearer Trials, and the second book is Celestial Monsters.
Nice. And what are the worlds? Like, what is it influenced by again?
So that one, I pitched it as Mexican Percy Jackson meets the Hunger Games, but with a My Hero Academia tournament arc.
Nice.
So it's a secondary world fantasy, and like the land is called Reino del Sol. And in this world, there are every 10 years, in order to keep the sun fueled and moving through the sky, 10 demigods have to compete in the Sunbearer Trials. And the winner is the one who brings the light back to the world, and the loser is the one who ends up getting sacrificed in order to fuel the sun. So in this world, gods exist. The fancy creator gods are the gold gods. And every god, regardless of their rank, has a city that is devoted to them and is also a reflection of them. So, for example, our fire goddess, Diosa Lumbre, she is the mom of Aurelio and Aristella, who are twin fire wielders. And I called the city San Fuego after San Francisco, but everything within the city is kind of geared around fire and charcoal. So there's torches. When you go to their like farmers market down the promenade, there's charcoal sketches is like a huge popular thing. And sort of everything in those cities is oriented around whatever the god is in charge of. And so having those, and there's also, each city has a huge temple that's devoted to the god.
Yes.
So they're very technologically advanced also. So it's like having those fantastical world. Yeah, it would be beautiful in animation. I think it'd be impossible to do in live action.
Yeah, it's like a Lord of the Rings level budget.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, but with tech, you know what I mean?
That is like a good point with the element of fantasy, because I want to say Felix Ever After was supposed to get picked up into a TV show. That was like announced years ago, and I haven't heard anything. Maybe it's, there's such a corporate Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and like options fall through all the time. They're almost expected to, but it can create this moment of marketing where people will pick up the book just because you're like, it's been optioned, even though it doesn't work out. It's still getting, because that's like what adaptations for authors, like the whole point of them is to get people to read the book. Like, we're not making a bunch of money off of our stuff getting optioned, especially, depending on what the contract looks like. But we get a lot of money when that advertising and that promotion just from being optioned in and of itself goes back to the book.
That makes sense because I think there was a big, oh God, what is it? It's the Court of Thorns and Roses
Oh yeah,
series. That
yeah.
one,
Mhm.
like I think it was gonna get, and then that got canceled. So yeah,
Which
that is
one?
interesting, and especially for such a huge IP. I mean, that was so popular
Yeah.
for a moment. I mean, I'm sure it still is, but people are waiting on the next book.
Which one made it
But
though? Wasn't it like the red, white, and
Red, White, and
royal
Royal
blue?
Blue.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that one did it. Yeah.
yeah,
That one
well, I
made
feel
it.
like
People really like that one too.
yeah, but it's funny because so many. It's funny that like so many options fall through because I feel like almost everything now is an adaptation. Like even like
Oh my God, yeah.
the limited series The Perfect Couple and Sirens on Netflix, which were both great. Those were based off books. So like the author for The Perfect Couple, her next book, which just came out, is getting turned into like it's kind of like sometimes people would, which is a crazy recommendation, as if writing a book is easy. They're like, oh, you should write a book so you have like an ISBN number, and then that proves that other people have invested in your like writing already or content. And I'm like, you mean I need to turn this pilot into a book series to get it made into a T? That's not easy.
Yeah, and it's also much easier to do with like a romance, for example. Those
Mm,
are always going to be a lot easier to adapt. There's no fantastical elements, like
yeah.
technically, so they don't need a lot of CGI work. And, everyone loves like romance. So that's just much easier,
Yeah.
frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, so I know that you had mentioned that you like are help like you one of your passions is helping other writers, especially trans writers coming up. But just since which I love that we're getting into so much detail, but is there any advice that you would like specifically give to trans authors that you could like boil down?
Gosh.
Because I'm sure you're teaching workshops on it. But
Yeah, aside from my Patreon, which has a bunch of like writing advice and we go over craft a lot, I think a really important part of being an author, regardless of your identity, is finding your community of other writers. So finding people that can be like your beta readers and critique partners, but also people who like share your identity. And the publishing process, and especially like querying, is so laborious and it's so torturous and terrible that you really need to have people who are going through it and who understand what it's like, so that when you have those really low lows, you have people to commiserate with and to lean on and to like just complain with, basically. But then when you have those really epic highs, you have people to celebrate with. So finding your community is always really important. Find those writers that you have fun writing with and exchanging stories with, and who you feel like get what you're trying to do and help you accomplish that vision. I think is so important, perhaps the most important part. Yeah.
That's
I
good.
love that. Yeah.
Okay, we are nearing the end. Uh, so close. Okay, one more question and then another question. So two questions. Okay. First question is in terms of looking ahead for to the future, what kinds of transmask stories still haven't been written in your opinion?
I think we need more trans stories across like everything, period. But specifically, when I think about like what's trans stories that I really want to read, like I love cultural fantasies. And so I would really love to see cultural fantasies that unpack transness, or like, explore it in a new way that like I wouldn't even think about it like as a Latina person. Like I would really love to see more like Black fantasies, more Asian fantasies that just like have all of the really cool and beautiful world building of us getting to play in our culture, but then also exploring what transness means within different cultures. Because, like a trans boy fantasy that's Middle Eastern is going to be very different than a trans boy fantasy that's Native American, for example. And like that's what I want. I want to consume it so badly because I love fantasy. And yeah, I just want to see how transness is reflected and explored in different cultures. I would love, 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 love to see more stories like that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier too, you could have that one culture, but across that culture, each individual story would be different for a trans boy or a trans masked, young person. So Yeah, I see that. The opportunities are vast, but it's about access to and like how can we help these writers get, the skills or just the support to write those stories. But I love your origin story too of just kind of writing and finding a platform to kind of put something out there. But yeah, that's great. Aiden, really like this has been just, it's always a treat. I was so grateful to get to see you when I was in Portland last year at the end of the year. But I'm just forever grateful to be connected to you. And I really appreciate you joining us on actually our last episode of season one.
Whoa.
But finally, to wrap up the episode here, closing note, what is your happiest memory? And Yas, expand. I know sometimes it's like everyone has their own interpretation if you want to expand on that.
Yes, yeah. So this does not have to be translated. It can be. We have had people do things as big as getting married and as small as they just got to spend the afternoon with their dog. So whatever is, and no pressure. We know it's the happiest, but if it's one of the top 5, that's okay too. There's no pressure. We won't know.
Yeah. Okay. I think like one of my happiest memories, like one of my favorite memories would be in 2022 when the Sun Bearer trials came out. So up until that point, my first 2 books, Cemetery Boys and Lost in the Neverwoods, came out during quarantine. So I wasn't allowed to travel or see anybody. Like my whole career just existed on my computer, which felt very fake. Um, and I remember one of the first events that I did was at Y'all West, which takes place in Santa Monica at one of the local high schools. And it was like one of the first times I was allowed to be out in public and like see my readers. And I remember walking to my line and it being one of the longest ones that was there and being very confused and being like, that's not my table. Surely that's Adam Silvera. Someone's confused us again. It was actually stationed right next to me. And just being so floored and in shock and like sitting down and then getting to meet literally hundreds of my readers for the first time and to finally connect with them and to have them express how much my books mean to me and how much they mean to me, back. I think that was that's like one of those moments that I'll never forget is being able to finally, interact and meet with all these readers who I'd been, you know, interacting with on social media only.
I know.
Or
Yeah.
like through my written words. And that was a really incredible moment for me. It was one of the best ones ever.
That's a good one. That's a
It's
good
beautiful.
one.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. Okay, I know I said just 2 questions. Don't get mad at me, Yas. Okay, I just wanted to see if there was anything that you could plug or talk about. If not, we can leave it here. But is there anything you can share?
I have a Patreon, which you can find through my social media. I'm Aiden Schmaden on everything. I just started a few months ago and it's very much geared towards craft. And I have been like leading so many workshops and I do so many mentorships with authors that I just have this wealth of information and like a Google Doc folder that's just packed with craft guides that I've come up with. So now I have a Patreon and you get a lot of stuff for free, a lot of different craft guides from different angles and different topics. And then for higher paid tiers, I do like deep dives. And then there's even a mentorship tier where I will give you like direct feedback on your query letter or on your manuscript or whatever. But outside of that, let's see, books that I have coming out. Espiritu, the sequel to Cemetery Boys, is going to be out in September of this year, which I'm very excited about. I just turned in the first draft of my first sci-fi novel, which the working title is Gay Titanic in Space, and that's about all you need to know. I also just got notes back on my first rom-com that I'm really excited about too. So I think I'm currently booked through 2029 or 2030.
Oh
So
my gosh.
there will be no short. And there's other things that I haven't announced.
Yeah.
There will
Fair.
be no shortage of Aiden Thomas content.
Yay.
Say 3 books, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And there's more. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then of course the one story that I want to work on is one that like doesn't have an outline yet. Is like just like plot bunny.
Yeah. I was gonna say this was really great. I mean, especially for me getting to meet you and know you. I know you and Avi have had a relationship. I think one of my favorite things just about this conversation is just how joyful you are as a person. Um, so, but yeah, thank you for joining us. This was a really lovely conversation, and I think a really great one to end the season on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was, yeah, I had a blast talking to you guys, so this was great.
Thanks, Aiden.
Yeah.
We're proud of you.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on season 1 of In Full View. We have loved having the chance to make and share this with you. A massive thank you to every guest who trusted us with their story, and every listener who shared an episode, left a review, or just showed up every week and listened. You are the reason this exists. And we don't take that lightly. We can't thank you enough for supporting us and our little podcast. We're heading out into the wild for a bit, but you can catch us at WonderCon in Anaheim on March 28th. And we may have a few other tricks up our sleeves. Keep an eye on the feed because some fun stuff might just find its way to you. And yes, there's a season 2 coming. We'll be back with more guests, more conversations, and more of the stories that don't get told anywhere else. Until then, please leave us a review and share this episode with someone you know would love it. See you next time.